The colored water dropped into clear water. Good for this right now. Influences the whole colored water dropped into. Okay, Richard, where did you start interviewing?
Where did I start interviewing? Throughout my 20s, I worked as a journalist, more as a hobby than an actual career. And so probably around the time I was 25, I started interviewing various people for, just magazines, downtown New York magazines, that kind of thing. And then I really got into, the whole sort of talk show format, I guess, in earnest in about 1996. At the end of 96, I moved. Disinformation had already launched, and I moved to New York, and I was offered a gig at a place called pseudo.com, which some people might remember. It was a sort of an online television network, but by television, it was, television was defined as something that was the size of a postage stamp. But it was video, and you could watch it on your computer screen. And I did a show there called The Infinity Factory for about 2.5 years on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. And it was kind of an Art Bell-ish type of thing, that kind of, paranormal and conspiracy theories and just kind of general weirdness. And someone at Channel 4 in the UK, a commissioning editor there named Stephen Keane, saw it and offered me a gig on Channel 4. And I did that show for 2 years. And it was successful. It's on DVD. It's called Disinformation. And then really after that, I didn't do a lot of interviews for a while. It's in fact until fairly recently I decided that was something that I wanted to pursue again, and then started DangerousMinds.net and the attendant talk show that's part of that site about 3 months ago. I think I've done a grand total of like 12 new interviews for that, maybe a handful more, but I've been doing it for about 3 months.
Excellent. Why get into doing interviews?
I don't understand.
What's the drive behind doing these interviews?
Well, I mean, the thing is, having a talk show it's a very good excuse to meet people who you would like to meet. You have a reason to talk to them as peers and to meet them socially, and that's the real blessing of doing something like that is I get to meet people like the Firesign Theater. I got to meet Russell T. Davies and David Tennant from Doctor Who. Today I'll be talking to a guy named Michael Pansner who wrote a book called Financial Armageddon that I'm quite fond of. So, that's really the impetus. I mean, it's a business. It's a new business that we're starting, and we're hoping to sell this show. But, it is also a lot of fun to interview people and to do a talk show.
Right on. Are you mainly doing for Dangerous Minds? Are you guys mainly? Are you actually going to any of the places for the interviews, or are you just mainly using online when you're interviewing the people?
Well, it's all done in a studio. There's only been one exception, and that was the Doctor Who interview, which was done in a hotel in Pasadena. We had to go to them. But, no, people come into the studio. There's a studio in Santa Monica, California, where I record these things on Sunday afternoons.
Right on. Well, it seems most like the interviews you're doing, a lot of them are on subculture, counterculture.
Sure.
Is that just something that it seems like most everything you're dealing with is it just, I don't know, what's your interest in that?
I don't understand your question. Sorry.
What is your interest?
In subculture?
Yeah, and counterculture, subculture, stuff like that.
I see. Well, I've always had an interest in counterculture and underground culture and things that are generally weird, and have my entire life, for whatever reason, sought that kind of thing out. I've been doing it professionally also for a long time. Since my late 20s, I've been kind of known as that, for doing that kind of thing and purveying that kind of culture to a more mainstream audience, in a sense as a kind of a popularizer for that kind of material or that kind of thought. and so it goes in there. I mean, Dangerous Minds is meant to be a little bit more mainstream than things that I've done in the past. I mean, certainly the creator and star of Doctor Who are not underground. That's the the biggest TV show in the entire world, and and I've got guest requests out for people who are much more mainstream than some of the people that you've seen maybe on Dangerous Minds so far. But it's the idea is to sort of take it from the internet to television. It actually airs in the UK on a satellite channel called Edge TV, and we're hoping to get a few more stations and channels around the world interested in showing this on television, not just on the internet.
So is it safe to say we won't see Uncle Goddamn again?
Well, I don't own the rights to that, so no. We're not going to
Right
be dead, so they're not making any new Uncle Goddamn material, that's for sure.
Yeah, actually, after I'd seen that, I tried to go look at it and looked like some things had happened there.
New things?
No, not new. It looked like they had taken a lot of something weird. Something weird. It looked like you couldn't even really get into those files.
Oh, well, he's dead. He's been dead for a long time.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the money that they were paid for the licensing of that footage went to buy a headstone for him. I guess he's buried in the yard behind their trailer or something.
Oh, wow. That's actually pretty kick-ass.
Which is illegal, of course. But
yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool, though, that they used the money and bought a headstone.
Yeah.
Hey, one of the other kids that was in there, I was looking at that, and it's something that he went into Christianity or something strange.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Are you writing any more books about what you're doing, or? No.
I have absolutely no interest in publishing whatsoever. I don't think people read anymore. I don't read books anymore. It's just been a long. I mean, that's not exactly true, but I'm speaking to you as as a former publisher, obviously, and as someone who has got a huge personal library. I hardly. I'm not adding to it very quickly anymore. My library used to be added to at the rate of probably about 100 books a month, and at this point, I've cut loose probably about 80% of what I move a lot, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. My wife probably looks at it as a bad thing, but we've moved around a lot, and we moved from New Jersey to Los Angeles a couple of years ago, and at that point, I just did not want to haul all of these books back to the West Coast again after just having done it 2 years before that, and so I cut loose most of my personal library, most of my record albums. It was a situation where my wife was sort of saying, like, look, if you haven't listened to this, B-52's 12-inch or this RuPaul 12-inch that you have here in the last 10 or 11 years, when is the last time you played that? Oh, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. Well, then it's going. You know what I mean? And so so that turtle shell has been largely dispersed, but I just don't find myself reading books anymore. I don't read any letters. I just read off of a computer screen. And I think that's the way to reach people. So am I interested in books? Honestly, for me personally, it would not be worth the time spent. Yeah. You know what I mean? More people will read Dangerous Minds online than would ever read any book that I would write.
Oh, yeah. With people's attention spans like clips, stuff like that, a full book is really, really hard to get someone into. And I feel you 100% on the...
You have to go where
acquiring so much stuff that you're like, well, I need to research that, and then you research it, and it's just there.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, remember, too, that any nonfiction book has a shelf life of maximum of about 10 to 15 years. I mean, where those facts are going to be so outdated that they're not even useful as reference guides anymore. And you can always find that stuff on the Internet. I mean, that was a good rule of thumb for me to get rid of my books, was simply like, can I find this information more up to date and more thoroughly explored on a website, then this book goes. I mean, I was carrying on books that, about the Trilateral Commission membership in the late 70s and stuff like that. When am I ever going to need that again? You know what I mean? I'm not trying to impress anybody with the books on my shelves. I just didn't want to carry them around anymore. So.
I'm getting to that point. I have so many books. It is a headache.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Moving on. Essentially, after Disinfo, you seem to kind of just like disappear. What were you up to? What were you doing?
I got married. I was working in advertising for a while in California. I worked on a book proposal for a book about digital piracy, and
right
the
on.
effects that would have on the entertainment economy, the very negative effects it would have on the entertainment economy. That was a book that, incidentally, I could not find anyone to take. It was co-written with a good friend of mine, Stephen Daly, who's a Vanity Fair editor for over 10 years, and we thought, certainly with his pedigree, and I have a certain reputation, and the fact that we were coming at it as insiders, you know what I mean, like people who saw where this stuff was going from the inside, it seemed like it was would have been an attractive book package to sell to a mainstream publisher. And we had a very big agent, the same guy who sold Tina Fey's book and Sarah Silverman's book and various things like that. And he was telling us, this is going to be really hot and we'll get a good amount of money for this. However, trying to pitch a story about a technology that was not used by any of these editors. You're in the book world, New York, you're talking about people who are over the age of 45 and probably over the age of 50, who've never done BitTorrent, who've no idea that there's illegal downloading of this stuff. I mean, they have a vague idea of it. Their kids might do it, but they don't really understand it themselves. And so when you try to tell people that this is going to destroy the entertainment economy as we know it, they don't really get it, and that seemed like a hollow thing to them. And so we received absolutely no interest whatsoever on a book that could have and should have been published. I thought, but it was just we were up against too much inertia and just plain ignorance on the topic.
I'd say you should resubmit it in 5 years, and maybe they'll understand it.
Well, it's already outdated. I mean, this was done two and a half years ago, nearly 3 years ago. So everything that we predicted would happen in that book actually came to happen in spades. But what would have been 3 years ago, a prophecy and an prescient one at that, became something that was kind of old news. I mean, it's all been there, done that at this point.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would argue that the entertainment industry is in big trouble.
Yeah. I don't know. How do you view piracy, file sharing, stuff like that?
I do an awful lot of it.
Yeah, it does seem to be apparently changing that industry quite a bit.
Well, there's going to be fewer ways to profit off of it, and certainly not profit as profit has been defined in the past, without a physical object that you can hold in your hand or wrap cellophane around or ship through the mail or truck into a store. You have if it's in this invisible digital thing, the perception. Why would anybody pay the same amount of money for a digital download that they would pay for a physical, for the physical object in the past? And people understand that. They understand that they don't even have to produce it. Why is it the same price? The price points in Amazon and at iTunes and these other places for streaming. Not streaming, but for downloadable digital movies and music, it's basically a rip-off. The consumer feels ripped off. They're not into it. And according to Apple's own internal studies, most people give up on iTunes after they've downloaded 45 songs. They stop doing it. What does that indicate? Are they stopping to listen to music? No. It's served as training wheels for them to figure out how to download stuff, and then they go out and they download it through Transmission or any other BitTorrent client that they can get their hands on.
Oh, yeah.
It's free, and it doesn't have DRM, and it actually sounds better for the most part.
Have you paid attention to Pirate Bay at all?
Yeah, of course.
The who was that bought them? I think not for sure. Somebody bought that site.
Yeah, it was some big entertainment company in Europe, but I mean, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. They announced 2 days ago that they were giving them 3 months to delete all the torrents.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering if they're just going to turn that into another Napster thing or something like that.
Well, I think that was the idea. I think.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I don't see that coming past.
Yeah, I have no idea. And what do you think will happen with all of this? Just a complete crash in a system for entertainment as we know it, or?
Well, it's not going to be a complete crash. It's going to be a long, slow, steady erosion of profits, and you can see this as an example. The best example is the Jay Leno show. They, instead of having a TV, like a CSI episode or something like this, which could cost as much as $4 million to do for a 1 hour, program, they've got Jay Leno on, and each one of his hours costs $250,000. that's the model of the future. It's going to be like, live events, that, that kind of thing that, it doesn't matter if it's on DVR or when it is, but like live events where they can really pull people in. So American Idol and shows like that will have a future, certainly, and they'll always have, big dollar advertisers like Coca-Cola and Pepsi or whatever, that are going to go into that. But if you look at things like, the advertising economy has, I think it's like GM is, I've read somewhere, it's like it's the biggest advertiser in the world, and I could be wrong by this, but I thought that the figure was like 27% of all television ad dollars are GM cars, or was. So I mean that's should GM go down, and that's a real possibility. Let's say 5 years from now, GM just is belly up, it's bankrupt. What's that going to do to the entertainment industry? What's that going to do to television? What's that going to do to the advertising industry?
Our government will bail them out. No, I'm kidding.
But so what if they do? You know what I mean? Ultimately, are they still going to put money into the NBC? No, they're not. So it's going to cause a ripple effect that's going to be very, very negative.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Not being a good thing. And it seems, I know people that haven't bought albums in 4 years or media,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they buy blank disc. I mean, I'm a prime example of that, right? I used to buy $4,000 to $6,000 worth of albums a year.
Yeah. My
entire adult life, since I stopped living with my parents, that is the kind of money that I sank into buying records, CDs, Laserdisc, DVDs, VHS tapes, and books. And I put a lot of my after-tax income into, entertaining myself and collecting things, that kind of mentality. And in 2004, that was the last year that I really spent a lot of money on CDs and stuff, and I went through like a real reggae phase that year. So I probably spent $6,000 that year on just acquiring like every reggae CD that I could possibly want. And then
have you ever thought about? Go ahead.
And then after that, I started to download stuff and started to realize, there's even better stuff online that I can download illegally. Then I could walk into a Virgin Megastore and buy. Of course, I can walk into a Virgin Megastore and buy something now anyways because they don't exist anymore, at least not in the city that I live in, and probably not in New York at this point either. So I think they've all closed down. But the point is that I had been spending an awful lot of money on entertainment media, and now I spend nothing. The only thing that I spend money on is blank DVDs and blank CDs. So, that just shows you where it goes. When a guy like me, obviously, kind of like, the best friend of the entertainment industry, and now I've completely abandoned them. I mean, I don't spend any money on disc at all anymore. I don't buy, I just get review copies now as well, so it's even worse for them,
Yeah, well, yes, you don't really need to buy it. You have the excuses not to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And why would you? There's more important things to spend your money on than CDs, like health insurance, food, and rent.
Exactly. Yeah. Richard, have you ever thought of doing an interview with dreadlocks?
Dreadlocks.
I'm making a joke. I was referencing your reggae.
I think that the logistics of that would be difficult. I mean, because how many people are going to have Skype in Jamaica? If you take my point, most of the people. But I really like 70s reggae. Most of those guys are dead.
Yeah.
Let's face it, the life expectancy isn't that long on the island. So.
Oh yeah. Well, moving on. What is your new show, Dangerous Minds? What's it all about? How do you define it? What separates it from disinformation?
I mean, it's a much more mainstream property altogether, but I don't want to compare it really to that. But it's something that there's 4 people who are involved in it. Everybody has a sort of a unique sensibility that they bring to the table. Jason Louv, who was the editor of Generation Hex, my friend Brad Novikov, who was the producer of the Disinformation Show, and my wife Tara McGinley, who is contributing to it and has a very fine sense of the absurd and how to find extremely ridiculous things on the internet. She's very good at that. So that's, it's like that, and it becomes the personality becomes a melding of the four personalities that are contributing to it. And then it's got the talk show component, so it is distinct, I believe, from many other websites because we have an active video production that we do once a week.
Yeah, how do you guys put stuff up daily? It almost seems like that sometimes. It's
no, it's
generally
not almost. It's not almost. It's daily. It's been daily for 90 days.
Yeah, I always find something I end up reading there. I was looking at I had no idea there's a new William S. Burroughs documentary. Or what have you. Yeah, I don't know. I always find something.
There's a Kerouac documentary too.
A what?
There's a new Kerouac documentary too.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I don't know. It's great. Let's see.
Thanks.
Why don't you smoke during your interviews anymore?
I don't smoke cigarettes anymore.
Right on. How did you quit smoking?
You know what? It's if you're asking my advice, and if you're a smoker yourself, you're going to hate what I'm going to tell you. I actually can one of those people who can just quit. I can smoke. I could buy 2 packs of cigarettes a day and smoke them for 3 months, and then just quit cold turkey and not even have a bad day.
Ow!
I know.
I'm a smoker.
Unlike my wife. Yeah, unlike my wife, who's taking the mints and probably been doing that for a year or so.
Do not tell her not to take the Shantex medications. I tried those. I quit for a month, and I went completely insane.
You know what? One of my best friend's taken that, and he'd had a really good experience with it.
Really? Well,
yeah.
Some people do, but like with me, I didn't have dreams for it, but I would have just It was crazy. It was just maybe I'm just too addicted to cigarettes. Probably the whole.
Good luck.
I don't know. Do you have a philosophy for yourself that you abide by, or
regarding cigarettes?
No, not with cigarettes. Just yeah.
No, not necessarily. No. I mean, I don't ascribe to any creed or religion, if that's what you're asking. No.
Well, I don't know. Like with myself, I kind of mix and match a lot of different things. I don't know. Let's see. Do you think it's possible for an underground culture to stay underground instead of becoming the next trend?
No, not at all. It never has been. It never has been. You can think of something that's underground going back to the way that people who were interested in the theories of Pythagoras would start the mail system. You know what I mean? If Howard Bloom writes about that in one of his books, and it's as soon as you can find out about something and it's worthwhile, it's not underground culture. It's just merely culture. The fact that fewer people know about it just as the initial stage as it begins. I mean, FM radio started out as underground radio in the late 60s. Would you call FM radio today underground? No, of course not. And the same could be true of, shows that are on Adult Swim or something like this. I mean, Tim and Eric would have been a very underground thing had they tried to do something like that a long time ago. You know what I mean? It would have been more like something that would have been more akin to the Kipper Kids or some kind of performance art thing from the 70s and been harder for them to get booking. But today, they can do whatever they want. And I think I don't think there's really much of an underground left. It's just, people, there's a culture machinery and it goes through that pump, very quickly these days because of the internet and television, the media.
Right on. Yeah, I don't know. It's like our culture is a giant corporation that just kind of incorporates some.
Well, it's a beast, and you have to feed the beast every day. I mean, if you look at how much content is produced every single day at a major newspaper, or every single day at a big website like Huffington Post, or one of these kind of places, that's people want the new thing. They want something that's really fresh. They don't even want to read their yesterday's news on a piece of paper. They want to read it, today's news on their computer and as fast as they can get it. And that's not going to change at this point. And the electronic delivery of all media into the home means that, all things are instantaneously accessible to absolutely everyone. So.
Yeah. Is there an underground culture that has a validity to it?
I don't think there's any underground culture. I mean, what is underground culture? What would it consist of? Like, underground dance parties in Los Angeles that teenagers are having, or you know what I mean? Like, these aren't what's underground. It's not like there's some new drug or new kind of music or and again, I would hesitate to call anything underground in today's culture because if it's worth knowing about, people could know about it overnight.
Oh yeah.
If it's worth knowing about and someone, posts about it on Boing Boing, is it underground after that or is it mainstream after that?
True. I think I actually should have termed that more as counterculture, but
I don't. If there's counterculture, then you could look at it as people who want to get off the grid. I think there is I take it back. There is an authentic counterculture, and it's the environmentalist movement, and it's also people who are into cult religions and who sort of want to get off the grid. I mean, you could actually look at even the Amish people as a kind of counterculture because they are against the prevailing culture. You could look at Hasidim as being counterculture because they are against the prevailing culture and live apart. And I think that there is some validity to calling the radical environmentalist movement an authentic counterculture as well, because that's something that cannot, by the very definition of what it is, be co-opted by the mainstream. You would never have the mainstream calling for, let's blow up some dams in the Pacific Northwest, or you know what I mean, or let's, that's never going to happen. So. Right. I find it there. To answer your question.
That makes complete sense. Like Amish people, they're not trying to make a reach into the mainstream. Nor
Absolutely,
they
don't want
about
any
it.
Part of it. Well, they don't want any part of it. It's the same is true of Hasidim and Orthodox Jews. It's like they feel that the culture outside of their culture is wrong, inferior. You know what I mean? Morally lax, etc. And they look down upon people who aren't part of their sect in that way. So it will always be that way. That's not going to change.
Okay, I have to ask you this: have you spoken to Ted Gunderson lately?
No.
Are you going to do another interview with him?
No, I don't think I could. I mean, even a guy that stupid isn't gonna fall for me again. He fell for me twice.
Yeah. Did he complain about the horns behind his head at all?
No. I doubt he saw it, to tell you the truth.
I mean, I remember because I forget what I was researching, but I was looking something up, and I found 2-hour video of him talking about his pursuit of Satanism and the child molesting and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away. I was like, really? I was like, everything's possible, I guess, but really?
Well, no, he is what he says he is. He is I guess he would be like 81 now, maybe.
Yeah.
He must have been like 72 or so when I interviewed him. It was a while back, and he is what he says he was. I mean, he is truly a retired FBI agent, and he was in charge of the Special Forces Division in Southern California. There were over 700 agents who were under him when he was, at the height of his career before his retirement. And and he did meet Ronald Reagan, and he did meet Gerald Ford and these people. When I interviewed him, it was funny because he brought framed pictures of himself with Reagan and Ford, and he also brought a photograph in a frame of John Wayne. He brought 3 things in a frame. So there's him and Ford, him and Reagan, and John Wayne. Why John Wayne? I think he models himself after John Wayne. People say, well, how could a guy as obviously as stupid as him get to that position within an organization like the FBI? And I honestly see, the only excuse I can think of is he's tall, he's very big, he's like 6'4", and he's pushy. He's very pushy, but in ways that aren't even like, they're not like aggressive. But like, for instance, I once saw him. We were both being interviewed for some British television show, and they were doing it at the Masonic Temple in West Los Angeles. And so he's there and I'm there, and they had all of these burgers that were sitting out, right? These like burgers that were like cold as stones, just sitting on this table. And he's trying to convince like this guy who had just arrived. Oh, have this, and he was like pulling his chair out and like, sit down, have some burgers. And there was just something that was very active about the way he behaved. He pulls out the chair, he tells the guy to sit down, so he was sort of commanding him in that sense. And there's this guy now sitting in a chair, not in front of these burgers, not really wanting to eat them, and not kind of knowing why he was sitting there. But he was sitting there because Ted was being pushy.
Right.
So the thing is, like, that's how somebody rises through an organization like that. I mean, you can rise even though you're clearly blatantly incompetent and blithering idiot.
Look at the organizations he was rising in. I think they probably have plenty of people in them like that.
I'm sure that they do.
He seemed like, to me, the good old boy,
He's a bit of that, but he sees himself as John Wayne. That's the whole point. He wanted me to see him as John Wayne. If you listen to the way he talks like John Wayne.
You should have asked him, when you shot somebody, did they actually bleed, or was it like a John Wayne movie?
I don't think he actually shot anybody. He was, he's an FBI agent. He was more of an investigator than anything else.
No, he's interesting that he was the head of those places, and it's like, seriously, come on. Maybe that's why we're having the problems in our nation, society that we're having today.
Well, he hasn't been in the FBI probably since the late 70s.
Well, not him. I mean, that we just have.
Well, I would think that his generation, once they were out of there, there was a fair amount of more competent younger agents coming up. I mean, he's a relic of another time. That guy.
Oh yeah. But he was a nice guy overall.
He's an idiot. He's a fucking idiot.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
I'm moving on. For Dangerous Minds, have you guys ever thought of doing like a panel or a comic or something on your site as well?
No.
Why not?
Well, the right person would have to present themselves, and that's the thing. It's like we debate this kind of things internally all the time because we're trying to we thought, should we have a fifth person? You know what I mean? Because sometimes with jobs and everything, people get they don't have all the time in their day to just post onto a blog, and so we thought we should get a fifth person, and that fifth person who's going to have the same sort of wide and yet deep depth of knowledge that I think we all bring to that site now. It's going to be hard. It's a hard bill to fill. And the other thing is that it's going to have to be somebody that I've known for a long time, because I honestly, why would I want to give a birth on my own personal site for what I'm interested in and my politics to someone I don't even know, whose politics may have nothing to do with mine, and then I'm embarrassed by it, and I have to, you know what I mean? It's just like that's something that it's the right relationship, and the right relationship presents itself at a time that is that you don't know when that's going to come.
Yeah, if you let the wrong thing into the mastermind group aesthetic that you have, it can destroy it.
Yeah, it just waters it down. So yeah, honestly, no, I'm not really interested in that. I mean, let's put it this way: if Tom tomorrow contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm not going to post on Slate anymore. I'd love to post in Dangerous Minds," yeah, I'd take him up on that. You know what I mean? But it's going to have to be the right situation.
Maybe at some point. In the coming years, after I finish my master's, I may try to hit you guys up on that. But pursuing a master's and doing something like that would be insane. Keeps you pretty busy. Okay. How do you feel about our current state of insurance? What we've got going on with our government? Wanting to implement pretty much hopefully a free insurance for people like me.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to end up being free. I think you're going to end up paying something for it. But if it's something reasonable, I think that's a good thing. I mean, if they don't pass health insurance, I mean, at that point, it's like people are going to fucking riot at this point. I mean, give me a fucking break. I mean, if you've ever lived in any other country in the that has it, you know what I mean? I lived in Britain for 2 years. I lived in Holland, and you've taken advantage of socialized medicine. It's the best fucking thing in the world. Anybody who argues against it is a fucking moron. And I've seen, there's that one lady that I thought she was pretty much announced herself as the stupidest person in America. That woman who was the one who called the Israeli guy Hitler. Do you remember that? Press. There was it was at one of the things over the summer, one of these town hall events. It was on Huffington Post and elsewhere. But there's some idiot woman in Colorado or someplace called an Israeli a Nazi while he was saying that he had great health insurance in Israel, and she called him a Nazi, which is blatantly absurd. But they also interviewed that woman, and she was explaining how neither she nor her husband had any health insurance, but her husband had her husband had pre-existing conditions and was unable to get it, and yet she was still against it. I mean, how much fucking stupider could you possibly be than that lady? And it's not possible. It's really not possible. She's against her own interest, but why? That's the fascinating thing is why.
Because she's bought into this right-wing media or this socialism scare tactic word bullshit.
Well, that's the thing is only dumb and older people have any fear of the word socialism because younger people look at it and say, oh, these old dumb people, these Republicans, these dumb people are against socialism. Sounds like social media to them. It sounds like Facebook to them. And they think, well, then the cool people must be for it. Therefore, I'm cool and I'm for it. So it doesn't have the same resonance. You can call somebody a commie all you want. It's not the McCarthy era in this country anymore. They weren't raised. No one cares. And so, that kind of thing, it's undergoing a change. I think that the brouhaha, we heard about this over the summer, and these, violent protests and these, protests that threaten to become violent and people carrying their guns to these things. I mean, this is all something that it's not new. It's happened before. People hated Roosevelt, and and they hated, the civil rights era. They hated Johnson, and so it's one of those kind of things. But when it actually goes through, and it's going to get pushed through this year, we know people are going to be pretty happy. I think.
Well, I hope something good gets pushed through. What I worry about is that, actually what pisses me off the most about it is the fact that it's kind of like when 9/11 happened. It would seem our society is based on a spectacle, and something, crazy things have to start happening before we take the preventative measure, which is just sad.
Mm-hmm.
I hope something good comes about with it, but I hope that, in all honesty, the push to get it done does not screw it up,
Well, I look at it this way. I didn't think it would be Harry Reid who would be the guy who would be pushing for the public option. That didn't seem like it was going to happen, and it's kind of pissing me off that Obama's not being more proactive about pushing for the public option very vocally. There's no public option. It's not going to work.
Why?
It's going to cover some people. It's not going to cover everybody, and it's not going to do a damn thing for the cost. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, the people who are, if you're of retirement age and you have certain conditions, or if you're of retirement age and you still have family who are under the age of 18, it's very, very difficult to get health insurance in some states. Like my mother and father live in West Virginia, and my mother was an insurance adjuster for Blue Cross Blue Shield. Professionally for like the last 20 years of her career, and she told me at the very end that they were quoting families prices of $6,000 a month if they wanted to live in West Virginia and have health insurance. So in other words, people who wanted to retire to the place where they were born or where their family might be around them are unable to do so and move back to that part of the country because of the insurance premiums they'd have to pay.
I can't disclose how I know, but I talked to quite a few people under older people that are on Medicare and Medicaid that have essentially been sold on the idea that if they pay a premium a month through this other company, they're better off, and it's very sad because they're actually finding out slowly. Because at that age, a lot of those people aren't reading all the fine detail, but they're finding out that they do have half the stuff that was covered through the government is not covered through their new insurance provider, which is sad. So, I do appreciate it, and this will do an outro. Ray? Yeah. Ray Carney and Richard Metzger.
Ripple, the choice of the next generation.
Ripple, bottoms up. Trust me. Ripple. Ripple.